Starting, all attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to our webinar on the future of networking. We're going to be taking questions at the end of the session, and also we probably have a survey that we'd like you to participate in, if possible, at the end of the session as well, which we would very much appreciate your feedback. So just to introduce myself, my name is Kevin Page. I'm the CTO for M24/7, and I have my colleague Andrew Goodborn here, who's one of our customer solution architects.
Hi there.
So, just looking at the agenda for today, we are planning to go through to give everyone an overview of SD WAN, how it works, the adoption trends that we're seeing in the industry today, the business drivers that we have for SD WAN, the benefits we think it brings to businesses, and also then some views on the different options for deployment, as well as then our own overview around how M24/7 will be bringing SD WAN to market and supporting our customers. So I think it's always important in these situations to make sure we get the definition of what SD WAN actually is. So I have a couple of statements here to walk through. I guess we start with what it's not. Today, we have a number of software-defined technologies in the industry that are being used. So in the world of SD, software-defined networking, SD-WAN isn't an SDN. Similar that it uses software technology to obviously provide the solution. But for us, in the definitions that we've made sure we kind of combine behind, it's really around it's SD-WAN. SDN is a more of a data center, larger architecture, software-defined infrastructure, not playing in the edge of the network as much as an SD-WAN model would. So that's the definition of what it's not. What we do think it is, it has a couple of definitions now, thanks to the industry on clarifying what it is. So specifically, application software-defined networking, SDN, SD-WAN is really about WAN connections. So this is really looking at the edge of the network and how the edge of the network operates and how we can provide access technologies to support business performance and also more intelligence in the network itself. And it's really about the distribution of connecting networks at a branch, offices and data center over a larger geographical distance. Now, Gartner also has a version of its definition, and the definition from Gartner is it's called the Wide Area Network Edge, so WAN Edge. So you may see the technology referred to in a couple of different descriptions. And their description is obviously SD-WAN solutions provide a replacement for traditional WAN routers and are agnostic to the access technologies that supports connectivity in the market today. And SD-WAN provides a dynamic, and this is, I think, where the overlay of SD-WAN becomes very interesting, policy-based application path selection across multiple WAN connections. And it supports the device chaining of additional services, such as WAN optimizations and security based around firewalling. So we're going to cover some more detail around that as we go forward. But I think what we've said we'd start with is just I'm going to hand over to Andrew to describe how it works today.
So on this slide, we're going to compare and contrast traditional WAN with software-defined WAN. Starting with traditional WAN in the first image, we've got a variety of last mile options depicted, DSL, fiber and LTE, and these might be chosen for a number of different reasons, such as resilience, cost or availability. And these historically require the organization to integrate them themselves, increasing the management burden and requirements on technical teams. So for secure connectivity between sites, IPsec encryption is an option, encrypting traffic traversing the public internet. However, this comes with its own set of disadvantages, either having choke points with a hub site that create a drawback in terms of the throughput or indeed a single point of failure. Or if you want to create a full mesh and avoid these choke points, it creates an increasing management burden as you add more sites having to configure tunnels to all of your existing sites. The complexity grows alongside the number of options available, making it more awkward to manage for internal teams. It becomes harder to troubleshoot, especially when you're using multiple different suppliers. But moving on to software-defined WAN in the second image, SD WAN controllers can manage multiple last-mile connections seamlessly using active-active setups and taking advantage of multiple connections simultaneously, delivering better value for money. It can manage integration automatically for a lower management burden, and the majority of SD WAN offerings feature performance and application routing with the availability of routing traffic over the best path available according to policies defined by the users. You can set performance SLAs for traffic types and dynamically reroute traffic based on the performance of circuits. You're able to set these policy intentions via a central controller rather than on every single device. So moving back to Kevin now to talk about the current adoption and trends.
Thanks, Andrew. So obviously the next slide is really around a Gartner-produced slide. This is from data that we reviewed in 2018. So actually we're looking at a very large market. So this is a $4.5 billion market as far as the opportunity that Gartner identifies in the industry today. Whilst we don't have the latest 2019 updates for the trend of adoptions, but actually I think the 2018 data is still really relevant. So what the prediction was here from Gartner was that almost by 2018, more than 50% of WAN edge infrastructure refresh initiatives will be based on SD WAN. But that's quite a bold statement, got a global statement obviously, and we haven't seen quite that adoption rate today. And I guess the other interesting element of the adoption and trends slide and market opportunity is that there definitely is this strong link between SD-WAN capability and features, but then the embedding of the security functionality that's needed to make this a holistic solution. So again, statements here are by 2023, 50% of all new firewall purchases distributed enterprise will utilize SD-WAN features. And that's quite a significant change. And I think as we go through the webinar, we'll be explaining what we see in the market around vendors that are coming from a security perspective, but also pure play SD-WAN providers. So we've used quite a lot of data from a Frost & Sullivan compiled survey, which basically had surveyed and canvassed a number of organizations, over 850 companies. They would canvass the IT decision makers. And this is both US and globally. The data is from 2018. But it provides good context around where the thinking is, both US and globally based. So what we've seen here is obviously there's 850 companies that were represented. It's got a strong split around the regions of the US and the rest of the world. It provides a good split across 5 key industry verticals. And also it's looked at a very good slice of the size of organizations and companies that may be looking to adopt SD-WAN. So continuing on the adoption trends, I guess the question in this slide is, which of the following choices best reflects your company's SD-WAN strategy? And I guess as we read through the adoption trends, basically from a vertical point of view, we've seen quite a change or consistency potentially across the different verticals. So we're seeing 21% of organizations, we do not intend to deploy SD-WAN in the next 24 months. But really, the 12 to 24 month timescale picks up 50% of the survey respondents identified they would be deploying SD-WAN in that 12 to 24 months period. And also there's quite a strong presence with people already have deployed or also in the intention of deployment underway, quite a strong position around that. And I guess it's interesting on the verticals around here as well, where people are. Certainly the manufacturing sector and healthcare seem to be leading the way in some of the progression around deploying SD-WAN. And obviously the banking, finance and insurance sector is still predominantly looking to deploy over the next 12 to 24 months. So moving on to the next slide, we're then really trying to understand from a market point of view, how people are approaching and creating SD WAN solutions. So what we've seen in the market today, and this slide conveys, is really a kind of a mixture of multi-vendor environments and backgrounds. So what we've seen is the real pure play SD WAN companies that have grown up, believing in the software definition of this technology and creating strong products that can really add all the functionality around the networking side. And maybe if you went back 12 months, not necessarily with the whole holistic capability of the security platform. And then we've then had a bunch of security vendors that have then looking to increase their product penetration, and they're looking to then develop the SD-WAN networking capabilities to bring a holistic product to market, which they can support both the security and the pure play elements of the SD-WAN capability. We've then also seen other organizations, deploying large technology, say Juniper, for example, deploying SDN-based edge devices that can be software defined and controlled and enhanced. That's coming from the network and the wireless vendor space. And even Cisco has deployed Meraki as far as the wireless platform for normal enterprise Wi-Fi. They've also made some adaptations to be able to use that as an SD-WAN product in its early infancy as well. And then I guess on the kind of more of the service provider side, there is a kind of goal from the service provider community to bring a managed SD-WAN capability to market, making the best use of all of these environments and companies that have built SD-WAN capability. And then last but not least, we're seeing the best of the WAN optimization vendors such as Riverbed, Silver Peak, Citrix, who are then bringing the application performance optimization into the product portfolio. So I guess ultimately we expect a product to evolve with all these capabilities present. I think the market is at various stages at the moment from the work that we've completed over the last 12 months. There are some leaders emerging, and obviously some of the early SD-WAN companies that have developed the technology have been quickly acquired. So VeloCloud and Viptela, which have now, VeloCloud's become VMware, and Viptela has been acquired by Cisco. So if you look at the right-hand quadrant of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, you'll see Cisco, VMware, and Silver Peak in that space. And also then on the challenger side, there's more of the WAN optimization companies, and also people from the security backgrounds beginning to kind of progress strongly in that market too. So I'll hand back to Andrew, so we'll go through some of the business drivers for adopting SD-WAN.
Thank you. So for a CIO, you're able to accelerate digital initiatives by driving down the cost of expansion, providing flexible connectivity solutions, fast and easy access to public cloud services, and less reliance on internal technical resources. You can also look to reduce WAN costs by offloading basic requirements to direct internet access circuits. For example, a small office with 5 VoIP handsets, perhaps not ordering MPLS access or leased lines, and instead using multiple direct internet access circuits with performance SLAs configured, as I mentioned earlier. For a network team, you're able to look at faster deployment through standardized design, agnostic to last mile technologies, with config templating being a feature common to most vendors. Visibility is another key driver for SD-WAN. Understanding what the network is doing, aggregating information from multiple areas to show performance details on a single pane of glass management interface. There's fewer devices to monitor due to features being consolidated, and fewer interactions between devices to manage. So for the VP of Networks at an executive level, rather than configuring specific quality of services per site, configure an intent to prioritize certain types of application traffic. Dynamically reroute business critical applications during periods of poor service, such as packet loss or increased latency. And if a circuit usually used to carry VoIP suffers issues, traffic can be dynamically sent via an alternative path. For a CISO, there's security built into the fabric of the network rather than just being an addition or a component. Conventional design either requires separate security appliances or routing via choke points such as perimeter firewalls. It aids with templated deployment of vetted solutions, avoiding the requirement for repeated vetting and approval of new bespoke services. There's a simplification of policy implementation, which removes hurdles for adoption, and you can integrate compliance at every step, right on the CPE, rather than just at the perimeter. So these are some further results from the Frost & Sullivan survey of IT decision makers mentioned by Kevin earlier. It focuses on the benefits comparison between the US and global markets. And I guess SD WAN is of particular interest to the US market due to a lack of shared telecoms infrastructure and reliance on a limited set of providers in any given geographic area. Therefore, as you can see, resilience and business continuity provided by SD WAN rates high on their list of priorities. Other than that, you've got WAN and application performance, granular security policies, in-depth visibility and cost savings for the US, whereas globally it's seen as moving to an application-centric architecture rather than a router-centric architecture is the highest priority. Ensuring the business continuity still rates rather highly, and so does applying granular security policies. We're seeing some common themes on both sides, application-centric architectures rather than router-centric, fitting the network around the business and rather than the other way around. Visibility and control being another theme, with the network becoming increasingly important, control of it is as well, and delegating that control to the stakeholders rather than just a technical team. Another feature of key players is rich APIs for integration with existing systems, and this can help with proactively informing of performance gaps of the service. We're also seeing two variants emerging. So we've spoken of the benefits of SD WAN with regards to diverse suppliers, as represented in the first image. This does have some disadvantages associated with it, such as no quality of service or perhaps unpredictable routing, owing to the fact that by very virtue of it being the internet, it runs over several provider networks. And this may be appropriate for small requirements, which depends on the circumstances. The second image aims to demonstrate the benefits of taking advantage of a private WAN, such as an MPLS VPN, in addition to the internet. This means having a path available for priority services such as VoIP, and being able to take advantage of service provider quality of service and SLAs on uptime and latency. It removes the management burden from internal IT teams and offloads this to the service provider, maintaining control of network policy without having to engage in vendor-specific training. And service provider managed SD WAN gateways allow for visibility and enforcement of service quality for upstream and cloud services, though ultimately one just needs to choose the right tool for the job. So whilst some vendors focus only on one element, either pure networking or pure security, a third category is emerging, which is SD WAN with integrated next-gen firewall security, taking industry-leading firewall features and making them part of the SD WAN service, part of the network fabric. You can avoid single points of failure from perimeter firewalls hosted at a single site by delegating it to the edge or the branch. You can deploy security features actually within the network. And next-gen firewall features you may already be familiar with, such as blocking access from internal hosts to botnet command and control, intrusion prevention to pick up exploits for services which must remain accessible to the whole internet, such as websites, antivirus, web filtering, and combining this with SSL inspection and IPsec VPN inspection. Ultimately, those looking to achieve both security and value for money need to avoid deploying pure-play SD-WAN networking products and aim to take advantage of solutions that provide the best of both worlds, both network intelligence and security. So I'll hand you back to Kevin for evaluating SD-WAN.
So I guess this slide is quite interesting. So obviously, what is actually occurring in the market today? So we're seeing a growing adoption for internet links being linked with SD-WAN. But the question is, okay, what happens to dedicated links and MPLS? Well, I think from the data in the survey, it's clear to see, when the respondents were asked around the following network service choices reflects their plans for SD-WAN deployments, then it's definitely, there's still a kind of dedicated Ethernet plus internet dual link strategy being adopted. Now, I think it's quite interesting that obviously, the dedicated Ethernet link still means that there's a need for dedicated, high quality, transport services required to fully support customers in their HQs or in their regional offices. So that's kind of an interesting, and I guess that quality of service is driven, as Andrew was saying, by the need for performance as well as the quality and latency around that. But certainly what is emerging is the possibility now to manage the different application traffic you have and choose the path where that is best delivered. So if the application is not quality sensitive or latency sensitive, it can be offloaded to the internet. And I think there's quite a lot of discussion in the industry around, does the SD-WAN, reduce your cost to operate networks? I think certainly when you analyze the way that your traffic operates in your network, certainly there is a case to be able to choose the scale of bandwidth you need for internet-based applications against dedicated applications that need quality of service guarantee behind them. I think one of the key factors is, though, as we look at the SD-WAN market, that understanding of how the current customer's network is operating and the application needs that it has is a real key driver to understand what the best adoption of the technology strategy should be for SD-WAN and the link and the access network link requirements. So I guess this next slide is really, again, looking at rating the reasons for choosing managed SD-WAN. So as I mentioned earlier, there's an emergent that says, obviously SD-WAN can be a self-configured service. It's available in that form. But I think from the service provider perspective, there's a belief that there's a lot of value that the service providers can offer. Both the service providers that own infrastructure and can provide end-to-end services, alongside hybrid in that, alongside off different networks being blended to provide resiliency and redundancy. So I guess in the survey responses here, you can see that I guess SD-WAN providers have a lot of interest in the US market. So 75% are really looking at having the problem of SD-WAN deployment managed by their service provider, who probably will be managing multiple networks behind that and aggregating services for them. And similar, obviously, from a global perspective, both US and global are very similar in the ranking of this going forward. I guess once that service has been provided as a managed service, then the troubleshooting and restoration of service then becomes the service provider's responsibility, rather than customers having to worry about different relationships to contact and try and triage their own problems on their connectivity or their applications. And I guess the single point of contact that brings, certainly in the market that M247 plays in, is as a benefit to our customers who really want to spend more of their IT infrastructure time helping their business rather than worry about connectivity operating or not operating effectively. And I guess once the idea is that from a service provider perspective, we can provide back more intelligence as a holistic around customers' end-to-end services going forward. I'd also say in this area as well that it's key that we are looking at more of the end-to-end SD-WAN anchor points and where they land and they create services in the networks going forward. And obviously, a lot of these SD-WAN service providers can provide, asset-based infrastructure of their own, so they've got more chance of guaranteeing quality end-to-end. So, if we bring it back to what M247 offers and our vision for connectivity-led services in a cloud market. This is our overall architecture. So one of the real key points in this slide that we want to draw out is that our intention in the products and solutions that we're delivering is that we own the SD-WAN gateway anchor points. It's important that they're on in our core infrastructure. Two reasons why. Well, first of all, it helps us guarantee the quality and visibility of what's arriving from the access side or the remote customer side into that SD WAN gateway. And more importantly for us is that if we want to be in the end-to-end service management and SLA provision market, then we really need to have the upstream control and quality service management above the SD WAN gateway. So in our model and the services that we provide, we can obviously guarantee our path to the internet with the partnerships that we have in that space. If a customer is taking voice unified communications from us, we can guarantee the access route from the SD WAN gateway into that cloud service, as well as any hosted and cloud services our customers may require, including obviously all the hyperscaler clouds, using our Cloud Connect product to ensure the quality end to end. So I think that based on the security layer that Andrew described earlier, and our really vision around making this whatever functionality and capability, the information that's generated from this application performance infrastructure available back to our customers, so they really can understand, you know, what their networks and applications are doing in a self-service manner is where our vision and goals are in the future for our product set. So I'd like to now bring our presentation to an end, and I'd like to thank everyone for participating in the webinar. I thank Andrew for helping to co-present. And I guess at this stage we are open to throw any questions that people may request, and we'll do our best to answer those as quickly as we can through this stage of the webinar. Otherwise, our plan will be to answer any questions in the post-webinar material that we may provide out. So we've got a couple of questions here already, so let's have a quick look through those. So the first question here is, how does SD-WAN affect business continuity? So we'll double back on this one, Andrew, as far as
sure.
So I guess what we're seeing, I mean, we see a lot more emergence of the risk management in businesses now. So I think one of the business continuity factors that SD-WAN offers, especially if you're looking at it from a business resiliency perspective, is that the ability to have dual redundant access links to remote offices or HQs almost doubles the capability from a live perspective on running services, continued availability at 100% and the performance around that, and also having the flexibility to then move those services to a different location should there be a need from a disaster recovery perspective. I think this technology really provides a key enabler around that.
And also the idea of taking failover, something that's been available throughout the years, but also making it more accessible through this software overlay and through this managed integration of these services. It just makes it easier to adopt and I guess more advantageous to be involved with.
Cool. And I guess the next question we have here is, what more intelligence does this technology bring to help us understand how the business is operating? So perhaps you covered that some part in the slides, but perhaps,
So you'll have noticed one of the key themes that we touched upon was single pane of glass management. So not only being able to dictate policy from a central location, but also to aggregate performance metrics and seeing what's actually going on the network, bringing this to the forefront of visibility, making it easily accessible to decision makers and stakeholders.
That's great. So another question from the webinar. Do you provide a managed portal to allow resellers to order, provision and manage? So absolutely. In the vision that I kind of covered earlier on, one of the key elements that we see in benefits around SD-WAN is that it's got a rich API interface. Now I think there's a level of exposure of that interface around, to the point where a customer can't actually destroy their own network and take themselves offline. And I think, with the variety that's in that capability, it is possible to do that. So our goal will be to protect that customer and also just ensure that the functionality is relevant and simple to use at that front end. So that's obviously our current product set that we're working with in this area at the moment is very much driven by a solution-based collaborative pre-sales capability. At this stage, because of the variety of options and the need to understand customers' networks and the profiling of how those networks are being used, we feel this is a much more collaborative, consultative kind of engagement that's required to establish that. So that would lead into the recommendation being clear on what the customers should really do. So, and then I guess obviously that, you know, at the moment we would probably provide elements of the initial portal from the SD WAN providers, but ultimately we would look to bake that into a complete end-to-end solutions that could be used by any resellers of our technology or our direct end customers.
So thanks for joining this and listening to us. We will share a copy of the recording and slides by email. And if there's any chance that you wouldn't mind filling out the survey, letting us know what was of interest, you know, how we can better refocus our efforts for the future, that'd be really valuable. So thank you very much.
And if you have any obviously further questions, then our team here is ready to follow up on those with you and talk in more detail to help you understand the products that we're bringing to market and obviously the capabilities and functionality they have. Thank you.